depending on the size of the population. Now, you might like to know that these fellows you see in this photograph here were enslaved by evolutionists because they were considered a subrace of man.
Those people were enslaved by slavers. Whether those slavers were knowledgeable or interested in the scientific theory of evolution is completely irrelevant. The creationist is now making an appeal to consequences.
Some of these guys, these are Aborigines from Australia, some of them were shot, beheaded, and their heads were boiled till all the flesh came off of them. Then their skulls were presented as ape men dug from the earth.
Another breach of the 9th commandment.
Personally, I think that if some of them could get away with it today, they'd still be doing this kind of thing. I mean, after all, they're still creating hoaxes to this day. Why not cut somebody's head off, boil it up, and then present it to the world as an ape-man skull dug out of the ground?
Because real scientists are not as evil or morally reprehensible as NephilimFree appears to be, as we can tell by this projection of his own character and what he would seemingly do to these people in the name of his God and his Jesus.
The final book of the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, where from history we had between 300 to 400 years.
Sure, what's a few hundred years between friends?
Haven't we already been here before?
He said between 300 and 400 years, which is a potential variation of 100 years.
Yes, we have. Moving on.
Again, carrying capacity determines population.
Another video quote mine. Actually, NephilimFree's entire video series here is one long, large video quote mine. Let's look at the real context.
But let's be generous. Let's say the first human couple lived 45,000 years ago. One man, one woman, modern human beings. Year zero. 150 years go by, now we're 4. We go to 300 years, now we're 8. Follow out that calculation, how many would we be today? Wow, we'd be standing chest against back, shoulder against shoulder, arms upon legs upon shoulders, miles up in the air, covering the whole surface of the earth. We are not that many people. We do not find that many human artifacts, remains, or bones. It indicates a young earth, just like the Bible says.
Again, carrying capacity determines population, not maximum reproductive potential. A 5-year-old could understand. Live up to the lab coat, buddy.
Well, you obviously do need a 5-year-old, perhaps a bunch of 5-year-olds to help you understand this.
It says a lot about someone when they still don't understand a simple concept like carrying capacity in an environment, yet they still feel justified in insulting people who do understand.
Since Mr. Pendleton was not able to get it into your head, I'm going to try a little bit myself.
Oh, the arrogance of the creationist.
I'm not going to read you everything you see on the screen there. You can take the time to do it yourself and learn from the mathematics of it.
Oh, creationist mathematics.
But your idea that maximum carrying capacity determines population is fallacious.
It should be good.
Because it assumes, of course, that people, any one generation of 2 people, will have as many children as possible so long as the population can be supported by the environment.
The creationist is claiming that the ExtantDodos have said that organisms will reproduce as much as possible so long as the carrying capacity of the environment can support it, which is not what their point was. And how does this invalidate the fact that the environment has a finite limit on how much life it can support?
And that's completely false.
Really? Why?
That's not the way it was in the past with humankind. It's not that way today either.
Why don't you tell that to the starving of third world countries living a hand-to-mouth existence for which high percentages do not survive to reproduce?
So your argument is absolutely absurd.
The creationist has not given a satisfactory reason why he believes as he does on this matter. This amounts to another argument from personal incredulity.
Ask yourself this. Do you know any couple that has had as many children as they possibly can from the time that they were able to till they were not able to? I don't think you have.
Ironically, the creationist has illustrated a point that the ExtantDodos were trying to make. Just because humans can belt out children one after another over the course of their fertile years doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Consequently, this limits population growth in a way that is not determined by maximum reproductive potential, which is what the ExtantDodos have stated all along. And in case creationists don't understand the why, the video annotated here will explain.
Either your ability to reason is a complete and utter joke.
Let me see if I can understand this. The ExtantDodos understand the environment cannot sustain an unlimited population growth means that their ability to reason is a complete and utter joke? Is that right?
Or you're just completely unwilling to accept anything that a creationist says because you don't like the science of it.
Creation science.
The world would be overpopulated if there were millions of years.
Never mind predators, limited sustenance, disease, resource competition, etc. Those things just don't count, do they?
And that's very much likely to be the case.
Except that this is not the case. Those of us who are sane understand what the ExtantDodos were trying to tell us. That resources are not unlimited, and consequently the population of a given environment cannot reproduce exponentially. It is creationists who do not get it.
Except where those angles differ, like they do in the conflicting genealogies of Joseph.
We've been here before as well. The creationists must have a really bad case of OCD to be this repetitive. Then again, we are talking about a creationist, fundamentalist, non-denominational Christian, aren't we? The rest has been cut to spare everyone from sitting through it again.
Third, a reservoir.
Another video quote mine. The original follows for context.
First of all, how is carbon-14 made? Carbon-14 is made in that a cosmic ray hits nitrogen-14 and changes into carbon-14. Carbon is normally carbon-12. Carbon-14 is unstable. We call it radioactive, in that it's unstable and gives off an emission that eventually reverts back to nitrogen-14. Now, all living things are made up of carbon, and some is carbon-14. Clams, algae, fish, birds, trees, animals, humans, all have lots of carbon, and some is carbon-14. While these things are living, there's a balance. But when there's death, there's a loss of carbon-14. The idea is if we could find out how much carbon-14 is left in something, we could know how long it's been dead. That's what the theory proposes.
The preceding was a passable explanation of the basic principles of radiometric dating. It would serve an introductory high school science class. But here's a few details you'd learn in the college course. First, carbon-14 dating is only used to date objects less than 50,000 years old. Second, the raw data must be calibrated to account for differences in carbon-14 concentrations. Third, a reservoir effect exists in ocean animals due to different sources of carbon consumption. And fourth, accelerator-based mass spec techniques allow much more precise dating than earlier decay rates, but the 50,000-year limit is still imposed.
You just described one of the many pitfalls to carbon-14 dating.
They did a lot more than that. They explained its limitations and how carbon-14 dating needs calibration before being used, but so long as you are competent enough to use the tools correctly, you will obtain accurate results. Carbon-14 dating also is far from being the only method of radiometric dating available.
Others include the thickness of the material surrounding the item to be dated, how much carbon-14 was in the food material taken in by the plant or animal during its lifetime, its local environment where it was found, the kind of material it was found in, how close it is to the surface of the Earth, how much solar radiation has struck the item, and solar radiation goes several feet down into the Earth, the fact that the Earth has more carbon-14 in its environment now than it did 5,000 years ago due to industrialization, blah blah blah.
A scientist explains radiometric dating. Radiometric dating is based on radioactive decay rates. These decay rates follow a precise mathematical law. A creationist hears
Radiometric dating, blah 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 blah, decay rates, blah 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah. That's what the theory proposes.
The preceding was a passable explanation of the basic principles of radiometric dating. It would serve an introductory high school science class. But here's a few details you'd learn in the college course. First, carbon-14 dating is only used to date objects less than 50,000 years old.
That's a fact that Mr. Pendleton is well aware of. However, how old a thing may be before carbon-14 dating is used on it is speculative. You'll get different answers from different scientists.
No, you won't. The creationist is saying that you will get an answer from one test and a wildly different one from another test. This is incorrect. Using the tools correctly will yield results that are conciliant and typically within a few percent of each other. This is generally acceptable to scientists.
Second, the raw data must be calibrated to account for differences in carbon-14 concentrations.
Carbon-14 dating, like all dating methods, is based on assumption.
No, it isn't. See this video for correct information on radiometric dating.